Who practiced generosity this last week? Anybody? Yeah, no one wants to raise their hand after last Sunday, if you were here last Sunday, because you're like, oh, because he's going to call on me potentially to come up and share randomly. So just a quick catch up for maybe if you're just joining us today for a while or for the first time. We've been in a series where we're actually exploring the idea of simplicity, that we could actually live simply so that we could live fully. The idea that we can actually find more in less. The things that we're looking for in our life can actually be reduced down more and more, and we can have more experiences. We can find more of ourselves, and we can find more of God. And so last week, real quick, a short little definition to help give us a little bit of a frame here comes from a gentleman by the name of Richard Foster. And he says, simplicity is an inward reality of single-hearted focus upon God and his kingdom, which results in an outward lifestyle of modesty, openness, and unpretentiousness, and which disciplines our hunger for status, glamour, and luxury. Notice his difference. I know you and I could think about maybe aesthetically simplifying a space. And it's a very outward expression. I'm trying to reduce the amount of clutter in my house. I love trash day. I love when the garbage cans get picked up and out, because it's like all that stuff that we did not need around here is gone. Like that would be a very outward expression of simplifying things. Richard Foster actually starts with the idea that it's something happening inside of us. There's a singular focus taking over our lives more and more and more, which then results in the outward expression of this simplicity, this single-heartedness that reduces our hunger for status, glamour, and luxury. Now, I know you're not going after the glamorous life or the luxurious life, but there are things that motivate you and I that we're oftentimes not even aware of, that are driving us oftentimes more towards ourselves. And this idea of simplifying our lives can actually help us move outwards from ourselves. And I don't know about you, but when I get more consumed with myself, things tend to not go as well. Really, life is best when it seems that I'm more outward focused, that I'm moving towards other people, that I'm actually less concerned about myself. And so we've talked for a few weeks. Last week was on the idea of practicing gratitude as a way of finding single focus or single-heartedness or simplicity in our lives. So I asked you to try this on. On 2 separate occasions each day, consider all that you have in your life, people, possessions, etc., and write down 3 things you're grateful for, allowing your awareness of God to grow in your life. So I'll ask again, now that we're caught up. Who practiced this last week? Low turnout. There were even a few hands that were up earlier and went down even more. Anybody else? I've got one. And maybe you didn't get to all of it, but you at least tried a few times. Okay, good. Okay, now the hands go up. Yeah, don't worry, no guilt or shame if you didn't get to all of it. Okay, don't worry, I still have a backup story in case someone doesn't want to come up and share. Anybody that tried it on, would you mind or want to come up and just share about what happened in you this week as you practice gratitude? Or were you aware of yourself? And what ways might you have become more aware of God? Does anybody want to do that? It takes courage and bravery and vulnerability. Okay, good. I could wait long enough. I know someone would eventually say yes just to kill the awkwardness. But in case this happened, I got a story from a friend of Midtown's who was actually a part of our college group last year. And she was in a season of her life in which things were hard. She found it hard getting out of bed. She was navigating just levels of anxiety and depression. And we were having a conversation one night as a group. And at the end, I invited her to try on this practice of gratitude. What would it look like to actually pause in your day, maybe a couple times, maybe once, maybe just at the end of the week, whatever it is, and just like write down what you're grateful for? And she texted me back this week, and I said, hey, would you mind texting your experience a little bit? And she said this: when trying to find where I practice gratuity, it reminds me of a phase of my life where I felt as though I had no community or people to grasp onto in times of stress and movement. I was stuck in my head and felt alone, like I was an outcast in everything I did. However, when I started practicing gratitude, I noticed a change in how I viewed my daily life. I started by writing down 3 things I was grateful for that day, whether it was having a car to drive, having a job, my friends, or just my family. Slowly, each day I realized there are so many things to be grateful for. I was waking up feeling ready and excited to start my day. It even started getting harder to pick only 3 things to be grateful for. My eyes were open to a new way of looking at life in an optimistic way. I was taking my time and being present. Even when things seemed so minimal or just a part of my routine, I saw how much of an impact they were actually providing for my life. I saw the people, the roof over my head, and I was grateful to wake up another day to experience whatever life threw my way. Even when life got hard again, I could now see the support system around me and how much love was being poured into my life each and every day. I was focusing on the good rather than suppressing and living in the bad or the ugly. I saw God's hand in things I have and the people by my side, and I felt seen. How cool is that? Just from literally naming things that you're grateful for throughout the day. In the Old Testament, the book of Proverbs, it actually says that ungratefulness deteriorates our bones. When we're not grateful for life, when we're not grateful for things, not noticing that stuff, we can tend just to dry up. And so she's naming that as she started to name gratitude, she was starting to experience more of God in her life. She was waking up with energy. You heard her name that even when hard things kept coming my way, I was able to kind of take it on differently. And I could see God's movement and other people's movement in my life in just a positive and transformational way. And so, again, as we're talking about simplicity, what we're not talking about is just trying to reduce clutter in our lives or put together aesthetically pleasing Instagram photos. What we're trying to do is practice the ways of Jesus that actually transform us from the inside out to move outwards in our life differently and to experience more of him, moving into a singular focus. And over again, may we be people who practice gratitude. It is a practice that goes all the way back throughout the scriptures, all the way back to the early church. And even today in our modern era of, practicing gratitude is a way in which people have gravitated just towards their own positive thinking. And Jesus would say it's actually a way of transformation. It's actually a way of experiencing my love, my grace for you, and you becoming something new. So those of you that tried it on, good job. I trust that it was helpful and good. And may all of us, even through her story, just be a little bit more aware. What are we grateful for? Because I know right now that your and I's days and our weeks and our months can be overwhelmed by what we're not grateful for. We can be overwhelmed by all that is bad, all that is terrible, all that is evil. And there are ways in which God is still moving and active in all of our lives if we have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. So may gratitude again be a practice that draws us towards this life of single focus. Now, as we move into today, there is a man by the name of Rene Girard. I was actually talking to Adam Galley, who's downstairs with the kids this morning. And he reminded me of Rene Girard and his mimetic theory. I'm not going to get all into all of it because I don't know the last time you or I or anyone used the word mimetic in our lives. So I'm going to keep it simple. He says this in quote, "Man is the creature who does not know what to desire, and he and she turns to others in order to make up their mind. We desire what others desire because we imitate their desires." He does a lot of work with sin and different aspects of our faith and life with Jesus and how we tend to mirror things. Have you ever noticed you have that friend who uses that certain word and over time you start using that word also? And you're like, when did I start saying this? It's so annoying because that was my friend that said that word all the time. You have that friend or you have that group of friends and you can see different group of friends and all those group of friends are kind of wearing the same thing, but each group is different. You could just kind of take on what other people are doing. And what's interesting is he goes so far as to say that the desires that you and I have right now, this past week, this next week, are less about what you and I actually desire and more about what others desire. Because what we're aware of shapes our desires more than what we think we're aware of. And we mostly become more aware of through other people what we have and don't have. If you pause and thought about your life right now, how much less stuff would you have in your home if you never saw it anywhere else? If you never saw an advertisement, if you never heard someone else talk about it, how much less stuff would you have? What kind of a car would you drive? How much more simpler would it be easy to pick out your clothes that day? I mean, we could keep going down this list. How much of your life is actually what you desire? And how much of it is the desires that you have because it's other people's desires that you desire? This unlocks something inside of us that can open us up to a whole new way of living, to where we can become not only more who we are to become, but more who God has invited us to become. If we can become aware of the ways in which we're aware of other people's desires that shape our desires, we might actually be able to pull away from desiring more. Are you ever plagued by the desire of more? We've pulled his quote up a few times, but the oil tycoon Rockefeller was once asked, how much is enough? And he said, just a little bit more. Like literally, like one of the wealthiest people to ever live in human history is still saying a little bit more. I mentioned last week that Dorothy lived in the land of Oz and we live in the land of Ur. Everything is prettier, faster, stronger, smarter, better than what we have or who we are. And we're constantly in this land of Ur. And we just can't seem to get that thing that we want because there's always everywhere that we turn. So a question for us to start. If you were to measure your level of contentment on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you plot yourself right now? Scale of 1 to 10, 1 being desire for constant, or a desire for more, and just a constant desire for things. A 10 being non-anxious and satisfied with all that you have. Where do you fall this morning? Where are you driven by things and stuff and next and more and items and what you don't have and what others have? And where are you like, man, I don't think I need anything else in my life right now. I have like no stress over like the next steps or the things that I have or don't have. I feel so free from possessions and material things. Where do you land this morning? And there's no shame in this. This is such a good question to be aware of constantly, because it's an opportunity for you and I to reorient our desires, to become in tune with the things that seem to be driving us that we actually don't want to have driving us. If you're here at church this morning, I believe that one, you're here and you follow the ways of Jesus and you've given your life to God who is life in so many ways. And you're here because you want your desires to change. Dallas Willard said that our wanters are broken. The things that you and I want are naturally broken, and God is actually fixing them as we go. The things that we want to desire good things. And then even if maybe you're not a Christian, you're trying to figure it out, you're not sure about following these ways of Jesus, I think you wouldn't be wasting your time here if you weren't trying to find goodness and beauty and peace in your life and in the life of others. And so contentment is a great question for us to be faced with constantly. Because if not, then don't we just get caught in consumption? Over and over and over again. And I don't know about you, but like I have a great piece of pie. I don't like push away from the table and be like, oh man, I'm like, give me another one. How can I just get more of that? Right? It takes like how long to like get like sugar out of your body to where you're like not addicted to it anymore? It's a long time. I've never attempted to go that long without sugar. But like it just keeps going. It's insatiable. Actually, your thirst can't be quenched for more because there's always more. And there's always So where do you land this morning on the scale of contentment? And I ask that because we have a way forward. The life of Jesus, through the life of the early church, through Christians who practice this all around the world. In this series, Living Simply, Living Fully, we're looking at the ways in which you and I can live a simple life so that we can become more content. And again, it's not just for simplicity's sake, but it's simplicity's sake for the sake of finding more of God. For you and I finding more of God's presence in our life. For you and I moving towards other people in compassion and mercy and justice. For you and I to be able to be peaceable people that are non-anxious and just can be present. We're not just consumed with things that don't matter a ton. And if you brought a friend this morning, I'm sorry, because we're going to talk about money. Or if you're just here, sorry. But like, if I talked about money as much as Jesus did, you probably wouldn't come here anymore because it's constant. Like everywhere we turn, Jesus is talking about money. And not always saying, hey, I'm going to talk to you about your money today, but in ways that get underneath the things that money how it drives us, why it drives us, the desires that we're not even aware of. And what's crazy is he says a bunch of scary things that we oftentimes don't think about with our money. Every time a paycheck hits in your account, or the times in which you're going without a paycheck, he's talking about our money. He says things like this: watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. He says the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, or your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. I know that's a weird one. We don't talk about our eyes as healthy or unhealthy. But there's a little footnote in your Bible that would actually say a healthy eye is an eye that is generous. A healthy eye is an eye that is giving. A healthy eye is an eye that is open. An unhealthy eye is one that desires the things, stuff, that is greedy, that can't find enough things. And he's saying that through that eye of unhealth will become more and more darkness. But in a healthy eye that is looking to give away, you will find life. Paul says, for we brought nothing into the world and we can take nothing out of it. Isn't that a good reminder? How much stuff we have that will sit and collect dust and rot that we didn't even come in with. So is life defined by what we have? Well, Jesus and God seem to define it by just being, by existing, by being created. Everything that we have right now, we came in without. Jesus says, no one can serve two masters. The Greek there for no one is no one. That's a challenging one. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot, again, the Greek, you cannot serve both God and money. You can't actually go after those two things at the same time. You can't actually prioritize those two things at the same time. It's not possible. There's no way. One will actually win out the other. For the love of money, Paul says, is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. How many griefs do you have in your life because of money? Like even right now, like let's just take the grief of like stress and worry. How much of your stress and worry is revolved around something monetary, whether you have it or you don't have it? You know, there's a bunch of sociological studies that would actually say that there's a happiness that starts to like go up as income goes up, and then it starts to plateau, and then as income keeps going up, happiness actually starts to drop. We live in different parts of the country, and we live in the West where you and I have more money than human history ever has as a collective group of people, and they would say about 70,000 is about that number. Now, again, you could argue California versus Kansas or something like that. But there is a number. There's actually a website that will actually give you that number in every state. And it would say about at 70,000 on average is where you see this peak happiness. And then things start to decline because you just keep going up and up and up. And it seems that the up and up and up actually starts to distract us from what life can really be. It starts to take away from things that like we thought we needed that we don't actually need. And we start spending our time and our energy in ways of just getting more or trying to take care of the more that we have, and there's a plateau. I don't think that means we need to stop earning. I have a lot of thoughts to that. I'm not going to give you all today because you might disagree with me, and that's okay. But you see, the scriptures Jesus is giving us warning about money and our possessions and the things and the time in which we spend on those things and our accumulation of goods. And I also want us to pause just for a moment because I want to invite this thought in. I don't think we think about often enough when it comes to our money. But here's a question for us just to ponder. In your family of origin, so the people, the structures in which you grew up in, what were the views and the emotional dispositions towards money? In what ways have those shaped your relationship to money today? Because I would argue 100% of us in this room are more shaped by our family of origin with money than by Jesus and the scriptures. That doesn't mean we haven't taken on practices. I'm looking at faces right now that are very generous people in your life, in our church. So many people. I love the generosity of our church that happens within the church and outside the church. So hear that from me. This is like encouraging to see the ways in which many of us are handling our money. This talk is still for all of us. But this right here, the way in which your parents handled money, the way in which your family handled money, the way in which you saw authority figures handle money. How were you shaped? Did you have much? Did you have little? Was money something talked about or despised? Was it something that you could work with joyfully, or was it something to actually suppress and shame? Was it something that you were lacking and need to gain more of? Was it something that took over and now you don't even want to touch it? The ways in which you and I are reformed with money are still showing up in our life today, and it shows up in the way in which we come to the life of Jesus when it comes to money. It shows up in how we actually approach the scriptures, how we approach life with him. So have you thought about the way in which you were shaped to think about and experience and use money? And how might that be shaping the way you look at the teachings of Jesus when it comes to money? Basically, a lot of this, when we think about these ways that Jesus is talking, the way that Paul is talking, the way we see in the scriptures, it oftentimes leads to a life that looks like this. A life in which we're living for ourselves. Me first living, without an I before the V. That's important to catch. I'm kidding, that's a typo. It starts with just live, right? Your and I's natural disposition is to wake up and to live our life, to follow our desires. That as we work off the model of Rene Girard, would be not even our own desires, but where we have desires to attain things because of our awareness of all that is around us, all that we have and all that we don't have. And so our natural way is just to live. So I want, when my paycheck hits the account, I need to think about all the ways in which I need to live, right? And then, if we've had good practices and maybe some coaching and, we've worked through some financial classes or whatever, the next one might be to save. Okay, I need to set some aside for retirement. I need to put this away for the rainy day fund. I need to prepare for when the car breaks. This starts to create a little bit of margin in our life, which I would offer to us that margin is fantastic because so many things come from the margins, like peace and patience and generosity and joy. But we start to do a little bit of saving. And then if there's anything left over, then we might give it. But it's mine, so I need to determine, well, we can do this constant tension with this idea of giving. And then do we give a lot? Do we give a little? Do we give once? Do we give 100 times? Do we give consistently or sporadically? I mean, we can keep coming up with questions over and over again, but this can oftentimes look like me first, LVing. And it's a way in which, here's the reality. I'll keep this part short. It's a way to live that says that the only way to live and the way to life is all that we can get right now. The years that you and I spend here on earth, this is limited. There's limited resources or limited experiences. I need to get everything while I can while I'm here. And it actually limits a view of life with God that says that there is so much life beyond what you and I can see right now. What might be more real is what you and I are experiencing right now in this moment. What you and I spend our time on each week. And we have to have that thought because there are people throughout church history who have died for that thought, who have defended the faith to say that my life is not my own because I've seen a resurrected Jesus who has given me life and has invited me to life now and beyond this life that I can see now. And so am I here to get everything while I can and then hope one day just to end up somewhere else beautiful and good? Or is my life right now actually a small microcosm of what's most real and where I will spend more of my life than my life here on earth? And what we can do is we can live first, which actually limits the ways in which God has invited us to a greater life more than what we can just see. So what do we do? Here's some fun scriptures that are challenging, and I would encourage all of us to consider taking them on more and more and more. Paul writes in 1 Timothy, in this way, talking about people with possessions and with riches, he's talking to you and I, in this way they will lay up treasures for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. Man, I'm laying things up beyond what I can see right now so that can be removed and I can actually grab what might be more real in this moment. I'm investing in something different than just myself. I'm creating space for my life to be more open and driven less by my desires and by my possessions and my riches and the things that I have or that I don't have, so that I can grab hold of what God might be inviting me to. Hebrews 13:5 says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Keep your lives free from the love of money. Now, I don't think you wake up being like, oh my gosh, I love money. I need to go get more of it today. Like, it's not that kind of a love. It's saying that it's a sole focus. It's a single eye on riches and more and possessions and things and finances. And my love of that is something that can actually become all consuming. And contentment, they're saying, is actually not found in the love of money. We can be content with what we have, even when it's less than what we want. So Jesus says, if you want to be perfect, if you want to be good, if you want to be righteous, go sell your possessions and give to the poor and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me. You notice that there's something in the way of following Jesus there. Hey, this thing might go back to that thought of where like you can't serve both God and money. Like, I need you to actually give something up differently. There was a famous preacher a couple centuries ago that when he would baptize people, he would say, yes, we're going to baptize your wallet also. Because the idea was from those centuries ago that would go to war as Christians, they would actually get baptized, but they would, I think it was their right arm, they would hold their sword out of the water because they knew they were going to go fight and kill with it. So they didn't want that part to be baptized. So then the joke was, well, look, I'm going to get baptized, but not my money, not my wallet, not my finances. God, I still get to do whatever I want with this. And he would say, no, I'm baptizing your entire body, your entire life, including your wallet. And then Paul gets really specific, and here's where we're going to start to wrap up because I'm going to get practical. On the first day of every week, he writes to another church in Corinth, each one of you should set aside a sum of money in keeping with your income. I know there's this thought in our current culture where like the New Testament never actually talks about this thing called a tithe, which would be 10% of your income. It goes all the way back to the Old Testament stuff. Actually, at that point, there was 10%, there was more. People were actually doing about 20-something% of their income. But Jesus talks about money constantly. Paul talks about money constantly. The early church practiced money constantly as a way of participating in God's kingdom. And what tends to happen is that we can give most of our life, I'll give my time, I'll give my talent, I'll give my wisdom, I'll experience. I think there's ways of practicing generosity that you and I need to keep considering. We can be more generous with our thoughts and our opinions. We can be more generous with our political views. We can be more generous with what we see to be a right and proper lifestyle. Generosity is a whole life experience, not just about our money, but Jesus doesn't warn us about being greedy with our time. He doesn't say that your worldview is like a root of evil. What he talks about mostly is our money. Billy Graham, the famous evangelist, would say that when God actually is able to reorient or restructure your money, then the rest of your life can actually follow. But sometimes we try it the other way. And there's still this thing in the middle of our life with God that just hangs up. And it keeps us protective and holding on to things that he may not want us to hold on to anymore. And so what we start to see, I'll get to the practical piece in a second, but we start to see an invitation towards God first living. And it looks a little bit more like this, where when we flip it, we actually start, oh my gosh, the I again. We start with give. I can't knock up there in this copy paste. We start with give. I notice this in myself. My paycheck comes electronically and it just hits the account and it goes in, and we have a little budgeting app that we do stuff with. One thing even through this series, I started realizing is I haven't been pausing and thanking God when that comes in. I haven't even stopped to think like, my gosh, how fortunate am I? What a blessing it is to be able to have a paycheck. Because you all know this, when you don't have one, you become more aware of how much of a blessing it is. And it can go the other way, though, where it becomes a curse. But I'm actually pausing and recognizing, God, you're the provider of my life. My life is yours. In Genesis, in the beginning of Scriptures, it's God who created the heaven and earth. Another way, it's God who created everything, including you, your life. Do we pause to think, man, God, if this is all of yours, I want to give it back to you. I don't want to hold on tighter. I want to give away more. I don't want to determine what to do with this. I want to steward it. Because we know that God has invited us to steward our lives, to be a caretaker for the things in which he's provided for us. And we have a posture that starts with gratitude from last week where we can give. And we set something in our monthly rhythm and our weekly rhythm and our whatever rhythm just to say, man, whenever this stuff comes in, there's a percentage or something that's going out. Because I want to remove this massive weight that sits between me and life with God. And this thing that can consume me more and more and more, this thing that causes stress and weight and anxiety and hardship. I want to be free from it. I want to experience joy and grace. And then we save. Scriptures talks about saving. I think if you don't even look to the Scriptures, it's just wise to save. Now, of course, you could go too far and just save everything out of fear and put your feet up and not do much and rely so much on what you saved. But there's something, again, in margin. Generosity, joy, peace is found in the margin. Are we saving? And then are we living? Are we reprioritizing the way in which we desire life to say, man, I want to be someone who gives. I want to be someone who saves. And yeah, I'm going to live. And you know what this might mean? It might mean living on less. That might be the best thing for you and I. In a culture, in a part of the world in which we live in a land of it does not stop. There's not a single moment in which you could have another thing or the next thing or the next thing in which you're going to sit there and be like, I don't need any more. Because the way in which our society and economy works, it will drive you and I to an anxious point of ruin. And it might be wise for you and I to live on less. So does that mean make less? No, I don't think so. I think make more, because people in the kingdom can be the most generous people that change the world through our resources. But then just give more. We don't have to keep raising our income level over and over again. We can give more. We can save more. You and I can be people who actually see our life of resources to steward what God is doing here on earth. Not just for the sake of our own accumulation and our own good. And it's not necessarily God trying to get more of our money, but just trying to get more of us. He desires it over and over again, and it's so clear that he wants to be with you and I. He wants you and I to have a more simple life, a single-hearted focus that continues to give away, to reduce, to become more at ease, to be less anxious. Richard Foster says on contentment, it is a joyful unconcern for possessions. If you want to find a joyful unconcern for possessions, just start giving them away. I think you'll feel angst in the beginning, because I know this angst. I packed up a bunch of clothes and shoes this last week. Rachel and I, you and I were talking about that. Bought a new pair of shoes a couple weeks ago. I'm returning them. I pulled out an old pair of shoes that I'm wearing today to wear. I can feel the tension, though. I can feel the angst. But these are the practices that remind me, like, I don't need more. I have something right here that works perfectly fine. And we can do that with small things, and we can do that with big things. But it's a way of you and I becoming free more and more and more to live in life with God. So here's some very practical things. I'm going to start to invite the worship team up. There's a lot of ways forward in this. This by no means is the answer or the one way of doing it. These are thoughts from Scripture. These are thoughts from people with wisdom, people who do financial teaching. These are thoughts from my own life and my own experience. Very quickly, if you ever want to have a raise, you can just go work a lot harder, or you can find a raise by reducing. Like, you can just spend less money right now today, and all of a sudden you have more money. Like, maybe that's a starting point for us. When we talk about being people who want to live generously, especially with our financial resources, spend less. Just don't spend all of it, what we're so tempted to do. And we make more money, and then we're still living like check to check, and We could still be on the edge of financial ruin, even though we just keep, like, that doesn't add up. So if you want to raise, if you want more money in your life to do more things with, just spend less. So then that means you have to have a plan. You have to like look at where you spend your money. That's a scary thought, maybe. Like, and you're like start adding, I'm like, why are we, like, Starbucks costs that much more now? I was talking with someone about a car wash the other day. You remember like those little surf throughs came through and they're like $5? They're like $11 now for just a basic car wash. So I thought I was gonna trick them and I went to like the spray your own. I still spent like $8 and I worked way harder and sweated where I was like, I should have just spent 11. Like there's just no winning. But like there's ways in which we can just reduce. And then maybe find a way to reduce, and then whatever you reduce for that next month, just go give it away. Because you're gonna spend it on something anyways, don't get stingy with it. It was already gonna be spent on something dumb that you probably didn't need, too many Starbucks or whatever. Like take that, save the $300 that you normally spend on something you don't need, and then just give it away next month. Try it, give it away to anything. The next step is to give as priority. And again, that goes back to don't live first, but give first. You and I have to make it a priority because our natural priority is to live. And so we have to say, when this comes in, the first thing that I'm gonna do with it is I'm gonna give. We have to prioritize our giving. There's that statement of, if we don't tell our money where to go, we're gonna ask where it went. Like we actually have to prioritize our giving. Next is to give as a percentage. This is a way in which you and I can actually calculate and plan for how much of our income we're setting aside. So just pick a percentage to start with if you don't do this yet. Maybe it's starting again with just giving something away, and then give as a percentage. Pick a percentage that works for you right now, because then what you can do as other things rise, you can rise your percentage. I'm gonna move from 2% to 4%. I'm gonna move from 4% to 8%. And we can always have an idea of what we're doing as income changes. I might need to go down to 3% as my income changed, or whatever it is. So may there be a percentage. Next, give progressively. And you can feel the order in this. Everyone can be invited into this. Is that give once, just give it a go. There's a lot of ways to do that. Consistently, so take that one time and turn it into a consistent pattern and rhythm in your life that works for you. Work towards giving generously, okay? This is where I think the tithe, the 10% becomes helpful. I think that what Jesus did and what the New Testament writers did is they took it away out of this law to be upheld to where if you hit that, it's a marker to where you don't need to do anything else with your life. That's what a lot of people got in trouble for by Jesus. But what it is actually, it becomes a new floor for you and I. I truly believe this. I practice this. Caitlin and I, there's a part in our life where we just say, this first 10% is gone. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But we actually can now set a ground floor so that we can then work towards radical generosity. That we can start to go above and beyond. That we can keep giving more and more and more away of the thing that tends to plague our lives and consume us. And we can take these steps gradually, and man, may they be done joyfully. Jesus talks about that. May you and I do this with joy. It's not begrudgingly. It's not, oh, I need to like check the box of being a good Christian. It's that you and I have been blessed with things that we get to give away, that we get to create more room for God to inhabit our lives over and over and over again. And then lastly, this creates space to give when prompted. If you aren't giving yet, it's hard to give when something comes up that your heart is moved by. I remember we, at our previous church that we were part of leading, I was with someone after church, we were walking out to the parking lot and their car had disappeared. And they're like, it was right here. I'm like, I think you lose everything in your life because it's clearly not here, it's probably somewhere else. And their car got repoed. They had missed some payments and certain things happened. And I just remember in my heart in that moment, like there wasn't much in our bank account at that point, but I called Caitlin and I was like, hey, I feel like we're supposed to like go take care of this for them so they can have their car. They need their car. Can we just go take care of this? And we're talking, I was like, that's like half our account. Like that's not fun right now. But then I just felt a prompting by the Lord. So two things led to that. One, we had some savings, and two, we'd already been giving. So that then it was easier to say yes to the thing that came up in the moment. But had we not had any savings, and had we not already been giving, it's like, oh, I can't. Whoa, that's on you, man. Now, that didn't come out without a conversation of like, hey, how do we ensure this doesn't happen again? Because we want to care for things along the way also. But it was actually having margin, and it was actually having a consistent rhythm of giving that set me up and Caitlin and I to actually give when we were prompted. What happens when you're prompted? Are you prepared? Are you prepared for when you're prompted? See, we learned from the scriptures of these last few weeks, and we have one more this next Sunday. It won't be about money. Life becomes truly life when it is given away. Life becomes truly life when it's given away. So here's some thoughts. And I didn't put these on a screen because I don't want you to completely take my directive. But what we see throughout the life of the church is one of the greatest ways to prioritizing your giving is towards the local church. So I unashamedly say, I think every single person who calls Midtown home, we should be giving financially to Midtown. So that's it. Go on the website, start giving, try it once, up your percentage, give consistently, wherever you're at. But we don't only give to the local church. And this is for your and I's discernment. This is for you and I to have conversation with God about, God, what do we do with our resources? So you don't just respond to whatever someone tells you. But this next month, we are friends with a leadership transition happening at On Ramps Covenant Church here in Lowell, just the neighborhood next to us. I'd invite you to consider just writing an anonymous check to them. Anonymous as it can be, knowing you can't fully do it without a name on the check or on the card. But they're going through some transitions that are major, and I believe in them, and I love what they're doing, and I want to support them. So we're going to just do a little bit extra to support them out of nowhere. Consider that. Maybe it's them, maybe it's someone else. Maybe for you, it's to actually give something away anonymously. Put some money in an envelope and drop it in someone's mailbox. Maybe it's to give to someone who actually you're working through forgiveness with. Maybe it's to drop in a check of someone who you might consider your enemy. There's ways in which you and I can just keep practicing this. Is there a single parent that lives next to you or that's at your school, your kid's school, or at work? There's endless opportunities, guys, everywhere we look. And there's ways of just cultivating this in our life so that you and I can become more generous people. I truly believe that when I can be more free from my money, I can be more free with people. When I'm free from my money, I can be more free with my opinions. Because money's the thing that seems to grab me quickest. Because I think about living first as my natural disposition. Last quote, we'll sing. Randy Alcorn defines contentment as this: being satisfied in who you are, and what you have. Those who love and serve Jesus can be truly content. Those who love and serve money can never be. How are you and I being invited to continue to grow in contentment by way of giving our money away? More and more and more. I want to be a part of a church that does that. I want to lead a church by leading that. Would love for us to practice that together. Because then we get to do things like celebrate. For us as a church, we give 10% away oftentimes in our community. We set aside 10% for missions and benevolence. When people have hardship in the church, we're able to write checks. When things happen in the neighborhood, we're able to write checks. When nonprofits are doing great work in our community, we're able to write checks. When a safe house needs to be remodeled for women who are coming out of trafficking, we get to pay to remodel that bathroom. You and I get to do that together by participating financially in the life of this church. And you get to do all the fun things outside of that your heart breaks for and that you're grateful for in your life. What a beautiful thing that changes the world. Why don't we stand together?